Why did their phones keep listening after they vanished? The recovered logs began with timestamps that refused to make sense. Every device recorded sound, yet nobody answered in return. Unsended messages queued up, like warnings never delivered. One voice note started normal, then leaned into breathing. Then the audio captured footsteps that didn't belong. Their final minutes warped into a repeating loop. A cold draft moved the phone, but no one was there. The microphone picked up a tone beneath every sound. When investigators replayed it, the tone answered back. Then an unsent message appeared, dated after the person vanished. Corrupted recordings showed shadows moving with no bodies. One phone's battery died, yet the audio kept streaming. A single fire alarm chimed once, then never again. After that, the phones began recording spaces, not people. In every log, a door latch clicked at the same moment. Then the audio switched from room tone to static silence. A final voice whispered through the speakers, "Too close." The last recording ended with a single, impossible laugh. And now your device is recording too, isn't it? The next log wasn't from a person, it was from a room. A recorded timestamp advanced without moving time forward. Between breaths, the audio started speaking from angles. When the call connected, the receiver wasn't a phone. Their final seconds contained no footsteps, only repositioning. The speaker laugh didn't come from one mouth, it echoed everywhere. A Bluetooth log revealed paired devices that never existed. Every vanished person's audio ended with the same room tone. Spatial audio turned the viewer into a detected target. An unsent message appeared, then rewrote itself mid-sentence. The phone's microphone kept listening after the device powered down. When playback started, the laughter matched the viewer's silence. A thermal image overlay showed a heat signature moving through walls. The last file name matched the map coordinate of your area. Your device's microphone indicator begins behaving like the others. The same spatial clicks repeat, perfectly out of sync with you moving. A whisper overlays the log, learning your breathing cadence. At the end, the recordings stop, except one channel still speaks. The presence laughs once, then the room turns too quiet. Your audio log opens by itself, inviting you to listen closer. The recorder hears footsteps that never enter frame. A voicemail repeats the same apology, time-shifted. You hear a caller move their mic closer to fear. The audio remaps itself around your chair. A message draft unlocks itself, unsent and waiting. Someone whispers your name, muffled, then gone. The room answers with a different heartbeat cadence. A broadcast breaks through audio like torn metal. Their audio drifts, as if the floor moved. A sudden fire noise swallows their breathing. Then, silence so thick it has texture. Your device clicks, mirroring their last position. A corrupted timestamp insists it's still recording. A distant bell rings from inside the walls. A soft laugh overlays the microphone, not the speakers. Their last breath becomes your room's echo. A map in the log draws a route you didn't walk. The corridor audio grows near, too near, then cuts. Your audio log starts opening by itself. A final tone resonates, like the missing people are listening. The moment you shift, the device insists your location has changed, then the audio stutters as if it can't decide what you are. A new apology bleeds in, is short, breathless, followed by a second voice that sounds closer than it should. You hear someone trying to wipe the sound away, scraping at the recording as if silence is the only safe proof. Then the logs stop being people's words and start becoming a map made of spacing, angles, and pauses. A single phone notification tone echoes, too perfectly timed, like it was inserted after the fact. The mapped pauses align with your breath, and the device begins to anticipate your steps before you take them. Somewhere behind the wall, a knock answers your movement, one strike at the exact end of each phrase. A corrupted file seems to open itself, but the only thing inside is a silent, waiting length of sound. When the silent interval finally breaks, it isn't speech, it's breathing recorded from inside your own skull. You try to back away, but the audio keeps repositioning you, pulling you deeper into the recorded space. Another unsent message appears in the corruption, only the emotional shape remains, fear, then resignation. A rhythmic crackle begins to layer under everything, like circuitry trying to imitate footsteps. You realize the device isn't recording the room anymore, it's recording you being there. The footsteps return, but they are walking from multiple angles at once, like a crowd standing in one body. A final burst of distortion cuts off the sound of the missing, leaving only the device's own tones to speak for them. In the gap after the cut, you hear a whisper that never forms words, only agreement, synchronized with your pulse. The corridor lights flicker off one by one, but your phone glow stays, like something wants you to keep seeing. A metal latch clicks open on the device, and the silence becomes attentive, waiting for what you'll hear next. Inside, a resonant tone rises, too deep for the speaker, suggesting the missing people are using the sound as a room. The tone peaks, then stops abruptly, like someone listening turns their head away from you. The silence didn't end, it rearranged itself around me, like it was listening back. A new timestamp appeared where no timestamp should be, and the device refused to explain it. From the audio, I heard someone breathe behind my own voice, too close to be real. The footsteps returned, but now they were moving through the walls instead of the floor. My recorder's speaker popped once, like a throat clearing before a scream. Then the deep resonant tone sharpened, forming a shape I couldn't see but could feel. A pause followed, too perfect, like someone covered the microphone with a palm. A notification sound played, yet there was no sender, no network, no mercy. In the recovered audio, a voice tried to say a name, but it dissolved into static mid-word. When I tried to replay it, the file rewound by itself, dragging the moment backward. The crowd noise returned, but it was missing its people, only the motion remained. Something tapped the phone case from the inside, as if it wanted out through me. A burst of static flared, and the waveform briefly looked like a doorway opening. I found an unsent draft message written in my tone, but not my words. The message ended mid-thought, and the audio behind it started laughing without sound. A distant fire alarm chimed somewhere far away, but the sound arrived smeared and wrong. The breathing returned, now synchronized with my own, until I couldn't tell who was inhaling. When I backed away, the sound stayed planted, as if it had roots in the recording. Then a final impact thumped the file, corrupting the last seconds into a blank black smear. And in that smear, I heard it, almost a question, cutting off just before the answer. The last log ends, but the device keeps filling the buffer with nothing, like it's waiting for someone who never arrives. At 2:17, the recorder starts tagging empty moments, timestamps stacking like footsteps no one can hear. Then a new sound appears, breathing that isn't matching the room, like it's coming from inside the audio file. A draft message pops up, nearly sent, except the cursor jitters between characters that never existed. The audio tries to correct itself, resampling, rewinding, and splicing until the room sounds stitched together wrong. Every time the footsteps approach, the perspective shifts, hallway corners don't line up with earlier audio. A crowd should have been there, but the noise comes from one direction at a time, like everyone is moving through a single tunnel. The recorder's clock drifts again, seconds stretching, then snapping back with a metallic sting. In the unsent audio, there's a pause, then a sudden exhale too loud to be natural. When the breathing returns, the waveform splits into two rhythms, one human, one mechanical, both failing to sync. I check the location data, signal strength climbs even though the phone's moving the wrong way. At 2:21, an unfamiliar tone overlays the log, like a warning trying to become music. The audio tries to auto-mute, but it can't. Every attempt triggers louder static and a sharper inhale. One unsent message appears with a different handwriting in the voice, calm, distant, and wrong. The room shifts again, walls slide a fraction, yet the phone never moves, as if something else is moving around it. A distant bell rings once, then the recording claims it happened 3 rooms away. The crowd noise returns, but faces never resolve, only breathy consonants and the scrape of unseen fabric. I scrubbed forward, the waveform suddenly shows a clean segment, like someone finally spoke clearly, then the file folds. A final near question forms, almost words, cut off before the recorder can finish the last breath of truth. After it stops, the device begins recording again by itself, like the unknown learned how to keep the loop running. The next audio log starts mid-breath, as if the recorder never stopped, only changed what it was listening for. In the background, a second rhythm answers the breathing, too close, too consistent. A soft click follows, then the timestamp jumps backward like the world flinched. The owner's last message draft appears unsent, addressed to someone who never answers. When the recorder tries to speak, the microphone picks up wet friction like fabric dragged across skin. The audio log overlays a second voice, almost the same, but wrong in the pauses. A faint vibration shakes the device, and the phone tilts as if lifted by an unseen hand. The silence breaks with a distant shuffle, then it draws nearer, around the phone, not through it. A new file appears at the top. Recording begins by itself, no user prompt at all. A question forms, half spoken, then the audio cuts at the exact moment an answer should arrive. On the next playback, the owner's voice is absent, only their exhale remains, looping. An unsent message timestamp appears to be typed by the phone itself, characters flashing, then vanishing. The waveform bulges violently like something pressed against the microphone from the other side. A soft knock echoes, 3 taps, time like a signal, not a panic sound. In the reflection, the owner's outline stands behind the camera, yet the voice never returns. The audio begins to pre-roll, capturing moments that haven't happened yet. A sudden burst of static wipes the log, but the breathing returns, closer, calmer. The recorder rotates 30 degrees wrong, pointing toward a corner where sound pools. Somebody, maybe the owner, whispers the word don't, then the file corrupts mid-phoneme. Then the recording restarts again, same location, different angle, like the unknown learned the loop faster than we did. The recorder begins capturing a second audio stream layered beneath the original, as if someone is already listening from inside the noise. In the new stream, the missing owner's breathing returns, then duplicates again, each inhale arriving a fraction of a second late. The timestamp jumps forward by minutes, yet the audio still matches the last seconds, like the day is being rewound incorrectly. A file auto-starts without being tapped, and the opening seconds contain a faint click, as if someone has pressed play with a damp fingertip. Between words that never finish, the audio captures a tiny roomtone chime, then silence stretches too long to be natural. The recorder begins to favor the far corner of the room, where sound seems to pool, like the walls are learning to listen back. A recovered unsent message appears corrupted, and the last line is replaced by a pattern of repeated breath sounds. The audio stutters into perfect loops, each loop ending in the same swallowed inhale, exactly where it should never be. A reflection flickers in the hallway mirror, the missing person's outline appears, then the audio never returns to their voice again. The footsteps sound like they originate closer with every loop, yet the camera never moves, only the acoustics do. A second device, older, unregistered, powers on and begins syncing, as if the unknown found another ear. When the sync completes, the combined audio sounds fuller, like a throat has been added to the room. The unknown learns a quicker route through the loop, it cuts out the silence and inserts a steady, controlled inhale. A burst of static carries a whisper-shaped pattern, but when examined, it's only the recorder chewing on the loop. Then, the audio reverts, everything goes quiet until the next log opens in the sound pooling corner, already mid-breath. A loud impact lands somewhere off camera, and the recording response begins again instantly, no buffering, no hesitation. The missing person's last recorded location changes again, mapped points slide toward the corner like magnets pulling metal. In the next loop, the unknown doesn't just listen, it replies by echoing a phrase the owner never got to finish. The recorder's file name auto-updates, and the last remaining clip begins to scrape against the edge of the audio, too loud, too near. A final restart occurs with no breathing at all, only a single, wet click from the corner, then the audio cuts mid-second. The next audio log begins with a breath that isn't attached to any body in the frame. A timestamp jump rewinds exactly 4 seconds, as if the phone is pleading for a different outcome. When the file auto tries to heal itself, it splices in a second voice, half-finished, then cut. The breathing layers multiply, 2, then 3, stacking in stereo like footsteps circling in place. An unsent message draft auto-populates, but the words never form, only a trembling cursor echo. A different device syncs mid-log, and the room suddenly sounds larger, like the walls moved. In the mix, a wet click appears, soft at first, then repeats at irregular intervals, closing in. The audio tries to compensate for dropouts, stretching the silence until it becomes a sound by itself. A phone in the corner vibrates without showing any notification, only a faint rhythmic thrumming. Then a loud object clatter, except the video shows nothing moving at all. The unfinished phrase comes again, now deeper, spoken as if through wet fabric right beside the mic. A rewind attempt loops the wet click, but the room's temperature seems to change in the imagery. Auto-started corrupted files begin to overlap, producing a chorus of nearly identical breaths. Between the breaths, a faint static ring forms, like a signal trying to tune a frequency it can't reach. A new sound joins, thin, fast, like nails tapping once, then stopping abruptly mid-pattern. The corners of the frame darken first, then the audio cuts like the recorder is being covered. For 1 second, every recording is synced, breath and click align perfectly, like a mechanism finishing a cycle. A muffled exhale follows the perfect click, no longer human, as if air is moving through something wet and hollow. The loop reaches a midpoint, everything goes still, then a single wet click lands with certainty. The device is restarted once, no breathing this time, only the wet click echoing into a cut that feels mid-second. The corner of the sound pooling room now shows a thin seam of condensation, as if something breathes without lungs. In the recovered file, the timestamp jumps backward again, only this time it lands inside a voice that should not exist. A second microphone channel fades in, capturing a soft rhythm that matches no human breathing pattern. The unsent message draft appears to be typing itself, letters forming as the log rewinds, then freezing mid-thought. When the phone restarts, the sound is different, like the room has learned how to imitate them. Auto-start corruption triggers again, but the audio is now perfectly timed, 3 clicks in sequence, identical spacing. A soft knock registers from the far side of the room, yet no door is visible anywhere in the log's view. A captured conversation fragment repeats, but with the final word swapped out for a wet, indistinct click. The audio begins to pool in one point, frequencies concentrate until the waveform looks like a funnel. Then there's a brief silence so complete it feels like the room held its breath right before the next device wakes. Every log file opens on its own, waveforms flare simultaneously, as if something is playing them like instruments. A new audio layer arrives, subtle whispering in reverse, like the room is rewinding someone's thoughts out of them. The contact list photo flickers, no face, just a pattern of shadow that rearranges itself every time the waveform spikes. A sudden wet click bursts through the speakers, louder than the room should amplify it, then the signal warps. Right after, a tiny vibration thumps the table, measured in the logs as if something moved closer without footsteps. The final segment shows one person trying to inhale, except their audio ends before the breath begins. In the corner's pooled sound, an echo forms that doesn't match any voice we've heard, too old, too distant. One unsent message appears to be addressed to whoever is listening now, not to the missing person. The room answers with a single bell-tone resonance that makes the device's screens dim together. And then everything stops, no breathing, no clicking, only a last corrupted waveform that curves inward like a doorway. The first recovered recording begins with a call that never connected, yet the microphone keeps listening long after the line goes dead. Under the static, an offbeat rhythm appears, like tapping from a place the recorder can't see. The user's last unsent message is recovered words that start normal, then degrade into a warning they can't finish. When the waveform is isolated, the tapping lines up with the phone's internal clock ticks, synchronized, not accidental. A second device in the room wakes by itself, recording without being touched, as if something is turning them on in sequence. Then the sounds change, breathing patterns arrive, too paced, too regular, like a metronome pretending to be human. The video companion file is mostly blank until a single frame shows a silhouette where no one should be standing. A faint laugh surfaces, but it's not laughter, it's the recorder's speakers stuttering through corrupted formants. In the logs from the sound pooling room, the clicks spread outward like a ripple traveling through matter. One recording ends mid-breath, and the final silence isn't empty, it feels staged, like a held door between moments. When analysts replay the last second, the waveform grows a new branch, an outline that resembles a doorway curve forming in real time. The bell-like resonance spreads beyond the speakers, the building itself seems to hum through the walls. Outside the lab, unrelated security cameras capture the missing person's car lights flickering in a pattern no one can drive. Their phone's GPS keeps updating, but every coordinate falls just beyond the building, as if the map refuses to look inside. A new unsent audio clip begins, no voice, only the sound of footsteps approaching the recorder from a wrong direction. At the moment the footsteps stop, the phone's camera lens fogs from the inside, like breath pressing outward. The audio suddenly distorts into a chord, multiple pitches stacked like a choir attempting to mimic one note of reality. In the waveform, the doorway curve tightens until it becomes a near-perfect arc, then fractures into mirrored halves. Analysts notice something new: the phones keep recording, even after their battery should have died, sustained by power that isn't there. The last clip ends with a final bell, then the sound disappears all at once, as if the recorder has been swallowed by what it was measuring. The audio log begins with a clean count-in, then every number arrives a fraction of a second late. I detect a rhythmic tap under the floor tone, repeating like a code that refuses to be decoded. When the caller pauses, the recording doesn't. Breathing comes through the silence, too steady to be human. The breathing synchronizes with the tapping, alternating gaps like it's waiting for permission. A sudden spike appears in the waveform, then the phone screen dims as if something blinked back. Recovered messages show the sender typing, stopping mid-syllable, and then nothing. In the same timestamp, a second device begins recording, without pairing, without permission. Both audio streams match perfectly, except one contains a whisper buried under every breath. I find timestamps that jump forward, like the room skipped ahead to the end of the call. The whisper stops, then a single impact hits the microphone, recorded as if it were inside my ear. For a moment, the corridor sounds normal until every footstep lands a heartbeat late. The unsent drafts begin to mirror one another, two different people writing the same impossible sentence shape. A non-human inhale draws the room's resonance outward, stretching the silence like a membrane. When it exhales, the phones record static that sounds like distant crowd noise, reversed. A final message attempt begins with their name, then the recorder replaces it with pure tone. In the recovered clip, the person's last exhale is followed by a click, like a lock turning from the wrong side. The bell-like resonance returns, brighter each cycle, and the audio pool begins to consume nearby frequencies. Then the recording catches a brief flicker of movement, only a shadow shape moving where the missing person was standing. My analysis shows the room's acoustics rewriting themselves. Every reflection arrives earlier than it can physically exist. The final seconds don't get quieter, they get emptied, as if something begins erasing sound from the world. The newest recovered file doesn't start with a person, it starts with a timestamp that refuses to match any device clock I have seen before. Within seconds, the log shows a call attempt, then the call audio becomes a tunnel, as if the speaker were being pulled away by distance that can't exist. The caller's breathing is there, but it's out of place, too perfectly timed, too consistent, like a metronome trained on fear. When I scrub forward, the recording becomes duplicated, two identical breaths, offset by fractions of a second, like the same moment replayed by a second unseen body. Unsaved message audio fragments surface, soft taps, then a pause where someone seems to wait for a reply that never arrives. The taps start behaving like a code, but the pattern collapses midway, then reforms with new spacing that matches no human rhythm. Then the logs reveal paired devices recording the same room at the same time, despite being sealed and stored miles apart. In the combined playback, the voices phase, words stretch, smear, and then snap back wrong, like language is being re-rendered by something that doesn't understand it. A door-like waveform appears again, but now it tightens faster, closing the space around the sound until only pressure remains. Behind the breathing, a faint second rhythm emerges, too low to be footsteps, too steady to be machinery. I compare frequencies and find harmonics that point nowhere on the room's layout, suggesting the sound source is outside the world the recordings came from. At 3:13, one device records a soft metallic click, like a latch being tested, yet no door opens in the video feed. The missing person's voice tries to form a word, but the audio fractures into syllables that sound like they're being rewritten in real time. Then the recording captures a surge of room tone, like air being inhaled from every crack at once. One phone's battery meter freezes mid-drop, yet the audio continues, meaning power isn't simply running out, it's being withheld. The corridor acoustics remap again, every whisper returns as if bounced from a space that has no walls. A final message begins to send, but instead of text, the waveform blooms like a flower made of static, then collapses instantly. The breaths stop, not fading out, cut cleanly, as though someone removed the microphone from the universe. In the quiet, a distant click returns, one that sounds like a sensor waking up somewhere behind the camera. And then the very idea of sound collapses into a void, no room tone, no hiss, not even the silence of emptiness, just erased absence. I traced the timestamps in the recovered logs and found they repeated in patterns too neat to be accidental. The microphone captured someone exhaling once, then again, but the second breath arrived as if it came from behind the wall. When I isolated the harmonics, they aligned like a chord, each device singing the same note without power sharing. In the unsent message drafts, the writing pauses mid-syllable, as if the sender was interrupted by something closer than words. Their location services kept updating with coordinates that never belonged to any map I could load. Then the audio stopped sounding like a room and started sounding like a mouth, close, wet, and breathing back. I compared device temperatures, and they rose in sequence, like something passing through them, touching one after another. A breathy laugh surfaced in one recording, but it contained harmonics that matched the door-like waveforms from earlier logs. The recordings developed a repeating gap, 3 heartbeats of nothing, followed by a sudden reappearance of sound from a new angle. One caller tried to speak, but their voice arrived slightly ahead of the microphone, as if time was being reordered around them. Their last messages changed tone, fear replaced by calm, as if someone else had taken over the impulse to type. In the corner of one video, a flicker repeated every time the breathing synchronized, like a signal blinking from the edges of reality. Corrupted audio revealed background details that didn't match the room, fabric rustling, distant footsteps, and a hollow draft. I isolated the cleanest segment, and the waveform tightened into a narrow doorway shape, then snapped, leaving only void absence. At the cutoff, the device clock jumped forward by seconds, impossible, unless time was being yanked from its own track. The synchrony returned once more, breath, then a single knock. Only the knock came from inside the recording device itself. After that knock, the remaining audio didn't fade, it was removed cleanly, like a file being deleted mid-breath. I found a final unsent note, no words, only a series of taps in the mic field that spelled a rhythm my ears shouldn't know. As the last log ended, the room fell darker than darkness, swallowing the grain and leaving only a pressure sense in the speakers. Then, impossibly, a new recording began without any user, capturing my own breathing from the other side of the device. I hear my own breath again, but it's coming from the other side, closer than my lips should be. The waveforms don't just distort, they collapse into a silhouette like a door forming inside sound. Then the audio cuts mid-exhale, clean, surgical, impossible for any human timing. My flashlight beam catches a thin film on the device casing, wet and warm, like skin after pressure. A new recording begins, no user connected, yet the breaths align with the room's temperature changes. I replay the last seconds, and the breaths start matching someone else's, someone crying quietly. From far away, a soft knocking taps through the microphone, 3 beats, then silence. The knocks repeat, but the timing slips, like the room can't hold the same second twice. I try to power down the recorder, but the breathing continues through the speaker like a heartbeat under ice. In the hallway behind me, my shadow moves out of sync, reaching toward the device first. A sudden thunder-like pressure hits, and the waveform door blooms wider than the device should allow. The unknown pauses, then resumes, drawing breath like it's tasting my fear. I find an unsent message folder, dated seconds after the person's final breath. The audio inside those messages is their last inhaled, stored, preserved, and waiting for an answer. When I play it, the device answers an exhale that isn't mine, coming from behind the lens. The waveform door swings open visually, but the room darkens as if light is being pulled through it. For one breath, the missing person's pattern returns, then gets erased cleanly mid-syllable. I try to scream, but the mic records only a faint whistle, like my voice never reaches the outside world. In the last seconds, the breaths synchronize with mine, then slip one notch ahead, like pursuit. The final log ends with perfect silence, followed by a single distant breath from my own ear. When I replayed the last waveform again, the door shape returned, only this time it was wider, as if something pressed from the other side. The spectrogram showed the pattern collapsing at the exact moment the missing person inhaled, like the device itself was swallowing the breath. I tried to isolate the missing person's voice, but the file's gaps weren't random, they aligned like a deliberate erasure midword. The new log began without any user input, and the audio meter rose as if someone were already speaking in the room. Then the breathing came, slow, measured, and wrong, timed perfectly against my own attempts to steady myself. I heard the missing person's final pattern start to return only to get overwritten, crushed, and smoothed into nothing. When the file reached silence, it wasn't quiet like an empty room, it was quiet like a sealed container. I checked the storage, no deletion logs, no errors, just perfect intact silence where evidence should have been. My ear picked up a breath that wasn't in the recording, soft, close, and arriving from behind me. I spun around, but the room looked unchanged, only the corners seemed to breathe with me. Back at the device, the timestamp flickered, each tick vanishing before it could be trusted. I listened again for proof, then the audio meter rose without sound, as if the device anticipated the breath before it happened. The waveform didn't just erase, it rewrote, stretching the missing person's rhythm into a pattern that belonged to no human body. I tried to export the file, but the transfer bar glitched backward, as if time itself refused to carry the evidence out. Unsent messages appeared in the archive, blank drafts with timestamps that matched the missing person's last exhale. Each time I blinked, the new log changed by a fraction: breath, erase, silence, like a cycle closing in. The device's speaker emitted a breath I could feel in my teeth, louder than anything recorded, closer than any wire could deliver. For one terrifying moment, the door shape opened inside the waveform, an impossible outline replacing the sound of a person. My recorder began capturing me, yet the waveform stayed blank, as if the room had already decided what I would become. And then it left me with perfect silence, broken only by one last breath from the far side of the device. The moment the waveform erased the missing person, the room's temperature felt like it dropped through the floor. Their recovered log file finishes loading, then the timestamps begin rewriting themselves, 1 second at a time. I hear the device's rhythm change, as if it's learning how my breathing sounds. The audio log records a breath behind me, too close for a body, too timed for chance. When I turn, the missing person's device identifier no longer matches anything in my database. The waveform doesn't just erase, it rewrites the silence into a pattern that feels like intent. My unsent messages begin to appear, typed in the same breath-length intervals as the unknown rhythm. I slam the screen off, but the recording continues, now capturing a room that isn't here. The logs start merging multiple missing cases into one continuous inhale and exhale. Then the battery indicator blinks, while the device sits perfectly still, drawing power from nothing. A door-like waveform forms in the playback, wider than the room's walls, and it moves toward me. The device's rhythm synchronizes with my pulse until the heartbeat in the recording matches exactly. Behind the portal, I hear voices trying to speak, then getting replaced by perfect, inhuman timing. The corrupted logs overwrite themselves with the same sequence every time I reopen the file. When I finally look away, the room is unchanged, except the breathing in the recording is now in my direction. Then everything goes perfectly quiet, no hum, no crackle, no movement, just the device listening. In that silence, the logs show my own voice recording, without me ever speaking. The waveform door opens again, but this time it aligns exactly with the doorway behind me. A final breath comes from the far side of the device, one last confirmation that someone is still there. And then even the recording stops, leaving only silence shaped like a warning. The investigator replays the last file again, expecting sound to return, but the waveform stays unnervingly flat. When they scrub backward, the timestamps jump, as if the missing minutes refuse to belong to a normal timeline. Then the logs begin to overwrite themselves, not with new sound, but with the shape of sound: breath without lungs. A faint rhythmic click crawls through the speaker, too regular to be mechanical, too human to be random. The investigator checks the unsent messages, and every draft now shares the same timestamp down to the second. They open one message thread, there's no typing history, only a perfectly spaced series of pauses. A new recording appears beneath the list, dated minutes before the device was even found. Pressing play triggers a soft surge of sound, then the audio cuts out so abruptly it feels like a throat closing. In the saved waveform, the breath rhythm matches their own pulse monitor, synchronized like a lock clicking shut. The device emits one extra breath, slower than the rest, like it's testing whether the investigator notices. At the next heartbeat, the room goes silent, fans stop, vents fade, even the recording microphone seems to flinch. The corrupted logs begin merging individual disappearances into a single continuous session of breathing. Some names vanish from metadata, replaced by an identical device ID across every case file. A faint warmth spreads from the device, and the audio starts carrying a second breathing layer behind the first. The second layer is not synchronized, it drifts, as if something else is searching for the investigator's rhythm. A thunderous thump hits the logs, yet the room records no impact at all, only the breath afterward. Then the recording stops permanently, leaving the last breath stuck in limbo, captured but never completed. When they turn away to check the device, the logs keep playing in their headphones, without the file being open. In the final seconds, the breath becomes perfectly audible and it sounds like more than one person taking turns. Before the file ends, a last breath slips through the mic, so close it could be yours. Did it match your pulse when you watched?